You don't want to do controversial stuff?
Well, it depends on the controversy.
Well, one of the stories we were kind of talking beforehand was I'm like a huge Star Wars guy, and I know Dale's got his beautiful shirt on. May the Lord be with you and with your spirit. So, I mean, everything in TV and everything in this modern age is so pushing an agenda or propaganda.
And just pushing ideologies that are so far off from reality and from our faith and really just within the last few years, right? So
yeah, so there's a new Star Wars, which we had hope because like the Mandalorian was really well done because who was the Filoni? I think's the guy's name, and John Favreau. He was involved. Favreau did like Iron Man and did the stuff. So he works with Disney, and it was just well done. And Mandalorian really felt like a spaghetti western. Like the first episode was like a huge shootout at like the OK Corral. It's like it feels like it's like a space western. So it was pretty well done. It wasn't like shoving a bunch of stuff that goes against our Catholic faith in there. But The Acolyte, and with some of these other movies, The Acolyte's the new series on Disney Plus. If you don't know what it is, don't waste your time because it's brutal. I watched the first 2 episodes and I heard
Braden. I know you and Braden watched a few, and Braden was like, "It's okay."
Yeah, it's brutal.
Dad, I don't know if this is
But
good.
it's like if you're a fan, you like want to know the back, like whatever they're trying to craft in this universe. So you want to kind of know what's going on.
I guess I'm different. If I really liked a movie from the 80s or 90s and they're making things of it today, or they made a remake or a sequel, usually they suck. And I have a really, I'm almost like snobby about when they redo things. I'm like, oh no, don't touch my favorite. Like Beetlejuice 2 is coming out, and I love Beetlejuice. That actually looks pretty good in the trailers. So we'll see, but I'm going to be snobby about it.
But they're using the original character.
They are using the original characters. They're using a lot of the same, they're building off of the storyline. But Hocus Pocus 2 was awful.
What about the new Ghostbusters? I haven't seen that one yet.
No. Braden liked it, but
what
they don't know any better.
The second one wasn't bad with...
The second Ghostbusters was good because it was all the same characters and it was in the 80s. I'm talking about when they're making.
No, I'm talking about this is the second new sequel. The first one, it wasn't
bad. It was nostalgic.
Yeah.
It was good because it was nostalgic and it brought elements of that first movie, but in a way that wasn't trying to just say the same old jokes and say the same old
So you didn't
things.
like the all-female Ghostbusters, you mean?
I didn't even watch that one.
I'm just joking. What about the all-female version of Ocean's 11?
I didn't watch that.
Yeah.
And Ocean's 11 is also
it's a remake from the 60s. Yeah. This reminds me of the I don't know if we talked about it here, the South Park episode. I'm sure Dale, you've seen it with the Panderverse.
Brilliant stuff.
Brilliant stuff, exactly. Well, the premise is like they're taking all our stuff and they're just making it more gay. Like that's the whole thing. Like Kathleen Kennedy, who's the head of Disney, is like, yeah, do this and just make it more gay. Like everything has to force this agenda and this ideology that has to be part of the storyline. Like it was missing. This big part about the story is now the central part of the story. And that brings me back to Kathleen Kennedy, who's running Disney right now in this 3rd episode of The Acolyte, which I haven't watched and I highly suggest you don't. But spoiler from what I've saw on Twitter and X is that these 2 twins who are part of the story. Ooh, these twins. There's one they didn't know still was alive. It was like the big story. But they were created like through immaculate conception through lesbian witches. Whoa.
You can't make that up.
You can't make it up. It's like jumping the shark. Like, yeah, space witches. And they had this, not 1, but 2. And they do like this chant and this goofy seance. And they create through their lesbian powers 2 twins, I guess. I don't know. Using the Force. It was like
real quick. You've probably not watched the Clone Wars, right?
No. Some of them.
It's an animated show. So most people are like, I don't want to watch it because it's a cartoon. It's actually really good. But there's a group in there called the Night Sisters, and they are witches. But there's nothing like... So it's like, I can see that being in Star Wars because it works in the Clone Wars, like in the context of the Clone Wars. But like, I haven't seen The Acolyte, so I don't know. But like, if it was just the Night Sisters, I'd be like, all right, cool, interesting. But if they're just like
there's like a whole group of them, like a coven of witches, which is just like everybody has literally panned it online, like everybody. But I think what part of the problem is is that the director, her name is Leslie, I think Headland or something like that. She's a self-professed binary, non-whatever, LGBTQ. Like her most important thing she has said is that pushing that agenda. She's come out and said that that's what she's about. And that not only that, the pride and how she said that in an interview that George Lucas isn't the owner of Star Wars and just he's the only one who gets to say what goes on in Star Wars, that she knows better and all these things, just a sense of pride. Like this franchise that like literally made billions and billions of dollars that like people hold revere from their childhood and stuff like that. She's like, yeah, well, like it's over with kind of stuff. Like we're going to do what we want. Regardless if people don't watch it, it doesn't make any money.
You judge a tree by its fruits. Let's see how that pans out. That's all. When you're forcing a narrative or when you have to force something, like, so you have a story and what makes a story great, there's always a hero's journey, right? If you know the elements of those stories, but then you try to, because you have to check box this, like, we got to have one of this, we got to have a little bit of this. It's like a recipe. If you throw in these extra things just because you have to, people can sniff that out. Like they can, it doesn't fit. It's just in there because they have to put it in there, right? Like, I mean, I just feel like the amount of nudity and violence that's shoved also in shows now, it's just like, is this necessary? Does it make the story? Like, no, it's just I think that we're losing creativity. I think that we're losing, why are we remaking everything? Because we can't have original thoughts. And in those remakes, we're just adding our checklists. So that's why people are seeing through that.
Yeah, and that's why they're having a crisis in Hollywood.
That's why I watch all old 80s and 90s sitcoms, Home Improvement and Roseanne for me. Like I'm not, if I could get Full House, I'd rewatch that. I'm just going to be TGIFing all the time. Like that's just because I don't have to worry about it. And I could just be, what's the point of movies and TV shows are supposed to entertain you. They're supposed to, invoke thought, right? And have you maybe escape like your everyday life into something different. But you shouldn't be like on guard, like, oh, what's this going to be? What's it going to throw at me now? I don't want to feel that. When I finally actually sit down to watch something, I want it to be something that I don't want to, be thrown for like, ugh.
And we don't want to have to tell the kids that every time they got to go out of the room.
Yeah, we just have a rule. Like if it's made after 2016, I have to pre-watch it. So we just watch, honestly, like Avery's watched Lizzie McGuire and Boy Meets World and all these shows that like I grew up with. And we started them on Home Improvement. And it makes me happy because it's nostalgic for me. And I know it's safe. Boy Meets World, they actually handled some really heavy topics, but in a way that was good and was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do, right? And it wasn't, I actually had to have difficult conversations watching some Boy Meets World episodes with Avery, but it wasn't anything that was like an ideology I had to unpack. That
something
was
before things that you should be talking about, like had to do with sex and sexuality.
Well, actually,
and stuff
they did cover sex, but not all these. It's so difficult to navigate this with kids because they don't know. Our culture is exposing kids to all these alternatives without them having a basis of what the original plan that God has is. So I just actually had this conversation with Avery while we were driving. I'm like, you don't even know like the whole big picture, but you're being exposed to all these alternatives to it, right? So that means that parents then have to explain sex to their kids way earlier in order for them to explain these alternatives that are being thrown in their faces. Or how about you just let kids be kids? And that's what I said to her too. I was like, if you live to be I forgot because she's good at math. We did the percentage. Like if you live to be 100 and 13, let's say, is your teen years, you're really only a kid 13% of your life. Why do you want to give that up to be talking about adult things that don't even matter to you right now? Because that's not the stage of your life that it needs to pertain to you. So we'll unpack these things together when you're ready, but just be a kid.